Hello children. In my previous video we had talked about the different reforms started by the government to develop the agriculture sector. We had talked about the subsidy also, the debate over it. Some economists were in favor of continuing this subsidy and some economists are against of continuing the subsidy. Now in this chapter we will continue lesson 2 of NCERT. In this part we will study about the industrial development and IPR 1956 broadly. First of all, as soon as the India got independence, economists were of view that without industrial development, proper industrial base, a well-to-do industrial base, no country can develop. And it was very necessary for the developing country like India. So industries were given priority in the second 5-year plan. Industries were given priority because the industries give employment which are more stable than the agriculture employment, and it provides the modernization and prosperity also. So Indian government adopted the socialistic pattern after the independence. It was socialistic pattern means the Indian government will be owning some important enterprises, and at the time of independence, Indian industries, they did not have sufficient capital to invest in the large industries. Secondly, there was not a well-developed market also for the finished goods which were to be produced by the industries. So it was thought that the main industries, the basic industries, should be kept under the control of the government. So in 1956, second 5-year plan started, and during that time, during this plan, industrial policy that is started from 1950 to 1990 had some specific features. The industrial policy under this period from 1950 to 1990, the public sector was given more important role in the progress of the industrialization. Private sector was given secondary role in the process of the industrialization. Private sector had to work under the public sector and under the permanent license Raj. That is, the private entrepreneurs will have to take the license from the government to establish any new industry under the legal prescribed rules. The main focus at that time was given to the import substitution, that is the production of such goods in India itself which were needed to be imported, which were earlier being imported. For this, the domestic industries were given some protection also by giving some concession in the quotas, import duties, and the fixing some import quota and export quotas also. Large scale industries were developed to build the heavy infrastructure, and small scale industries were being developed, they were encouraged to create employment. So these were some features of the industrial policy from 1950 to 1990. During second 5-year plan, Industrial Policy Resolution 1956 was started, and planning in the real sense began in the second 5-year plan. Second 5-year plan was the landmark contribution in the development of the planning. Many distinguished thinkers contributed to the formation of the 5-year plans. Among them, the name of famous statistician Prasanta Chandra Mahavalanonis stands first. He was very famous statistician. In the real sense, I told you just now that second five-year plan was landmark contribution to the development planning in general. This second five-year plan was based on the ideas of Mahavalanonis. He was very famous statistician and he is regarded as the architect of the Indian planning. Mahalanobis established Indian Statistical Institutes also in Calcutta, and he also had started a journal. Its name was Sankhya. While preparing the second five-year plan, Mahalanobis invited economists from all over India and from abroad also to get their valuable ideas to advise him. And from among those economists, many of the economists have got the Nobel Prizes also. So this statistician Mahalanobis stands first, and he has framed the industrial policy which proved to be most successful during the planning time. This plan had some features. The second industrial policy resolution was adopted in April 1956. This resolution was formed on the basis of the second five-year plan. Cottage and small-scale industries were given importance because it is supposed that the small-scale and cottage industries provide employment at large scale to the persons who are not well-trained or who are not educated. So IPR 1956 established on the need of the balanced regional development and development of the technical and managerial codes also. Industrial workers were given more incentives to maintain peace. It is argued that the government will discriminate between the foreign and the industrial Indian units. Foreign capital was welcomed in the national interest. The provision of IPR 1956 can be summarized like, in this resolution, the industries were classified into three groups. First group was that of the industries which were to be exclusively owned by the government. They were run only by the government. No private entrepreneurs were allowed to run those industries. Secondly, the industries in which the private sector could supplement the government efforts. And third group was of those industries which could be run by the private entrepreneurs. Under IPR 1956, the private sector was kept under the state control through the license system. That means no one was allowed to set up the industry without obtaining the license from the government. And these units were set up in the backward areas mostly by giving some concessions in the taxes or in the electricity at lower tariffs. It means those entrepreneurs who set up their industries in the backward areas, they will be getting some relaxation, some concessions in the tax benefits and electricity at lower rates. It means there will be the balanced regional development of the well-developed areas and the backward areas. Along with it, as I told you just now, that every private entrepreneur will have to take the license from the government. Other than this, If any existing enterprise is there and it wants to expand its output, or it wants to diversify its product, means to produce something else, they will also have to take the license or permission from the government. Certainly, it would have discouraged some entrepreneurs to produce more. But the reason was, again, the reason for this was that the government did not want that there should be extra production than whatever is needed in the country. In 1955, Village and Cottage Industry Committee, which is well known as Carve Committee, was also set up to know the possibility of the promotion of the rural development. It was thought that SSI, small scale industries, will be more labor intensive, so they can generate more employment, and the government should encourage the setup of the SSIs. The government reserved in number of the products which were to be produced only by SSIs, small scale industries. The large scale industries will not be permitted to produce those products. The reason was to protect the small scale industries product, because they were generally produced man-made and they could not stand with the competition of the large scale companies which were being produced through the machines. So, due to this reason, the government had reserved some products which were to be produced by the small scale industries also, and small scale industries were given a shield also. Shield means they were given some protection also in case of the tax benefits and the electricity tariffs also. So these were some features of IPR 1956. Certainly there were some good impacts and some bad impacts of this policy, that is to give more priority to the government. Some basic industries were kept under the control of the state only, and the private persons were not allowed to run those industries, etc. This thing, along with it, there was one policy of the government, that in the local industries, local producers should be protected from the foreign competition also. So it had some good impacts and some bad impacts. We will see one by one. Some good impacts were there. The economic growth was very high during the second 5-year plan. Industrial output increased remarkably, and there was 6% annual growth rate in the output during this period. During this period, one more important feature was that sunrise industries, specifically the electronic industries, they grew a lot. They emerged in the domestic country. Large scale industries like Rourkela and Bhilai steel industries, they also promoted very nicely. Growth of small scale industries contributed to generate more and more employment, and that also gave encouraged the social justice and was helpful in the economic growth of the country. But along with these good points, this IPR 1956 proved to be had some demerits also, some bad impacts also on the economy. As I told you, that public sector was given more importance, and all the basic industries, large scale industries mostly, they were kept under the control of the government. So it became the monopoly of the public industries. And this public industry, this monopoly of the public sector became the dead social weight. There was inefficiency, there was corruption. These things became very common feature of the industrial sector, and it caused the huge loss to the economic resources, national resources, wasting national resources, etc. During second five-year plan, the domestic industries were protected from the foreign competition also. Protection of domestic industries helped in growth of the country. But due to the protection, these industries, small scale industry, they did not try to improve the quality of the products, because they were not aware, they had not fear of the foreign competition. They thought that whatever they will produce, that will be sold, that will be demanded by the consumers. Saving foreign exchange through the import substitution rather than generating it through the export promotion. It was supposed by the government that the foreign exchange reserve will be increased through the import substitution policy. Import substitution policy means, again I told, okay, the goods which are being imported earlier, now they were encouraged to be produced in our domestic country also. So the government thought that the foreign exchange will be saved by not importing the goods from outside. That proved to be a wrong policy. Rather, what should have happened? The government should have generated the foreign exchange. It should have increased the foreign exchange reserve by exporting more to the other countries. So it proved very harmful for the economy, for the Indian economy. As a result of this policy, import substitution policy, the foreign exchange reserve declined and reached to the minimum level during that time, and due to which the India had to keep its gold reserve with the World Bank to continue its loan. So this was very pitiable condition at that time. So this was all about this part. In next video, I'll take the foreign trade at that time. Till then, goodbye.